Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we have a mission that feels, well, almost geometrically impossible.
It really does.
We are taking two source packets, two completely separate high-stakes narratives, and we're going to try and fuse them together.
And they are from totally different eras, different geographies. It's a fascinating challenge.
Exactly. We're talking about a top-secret aviation mystery that begins in, of all places, the landlocked U.S. Rockies back in 1954.
And we're linking that to a vicious, very contemporary geopolitical plot that's unfolding 34 years later in 1988 South Africa.
Our goal here is to perform a sort of deep surgical extraction of the critical nuggets that link these two events.
We have to understand how a Cold War cover-up, something involving top military secrets and, literally buried hardware, how that sets the stage decades later for this massive state-sponsored plot.
An operation called Wild Rose?
Operation Wild Rose, yeah, which is all about political assassination and strategic terror. It's really a study in how deeply institutions will bury the truth and then how violently that truth can explode when it's accidentally dug up.
Okay, so let's start with the first narrative, Vixen 03. It has the central paradox that's almost unbelievable. It's the ultimate where did it go question.
Right.
We have a massive top-secret military transport plane, the Boeing C-97 Stratocruiser, which officially, according to all the records, vanished. Just vanished, without a trace, over the vast cold expanse of the Pacific Ocean in January 1954.
And that's the story for 3 decades. But then, 34 years later, this exact same plane is discovered. And not just discovered, it's perfectly preserved, sunk, and completely concealed deep inside the Colorado Rockies.
It's not just a navigational error.
No. This is a manufactured cover-up spanning thousands of miles and, more than 3 decades. That's our starting point.
And then, running parallel to this discovery, we have this explosive geopolitical setup in 1988 South Africa. The focus here is on the African Army of Revolution, the AAR.
Led by the incredibly charismatic American, Hiram Lusana. And you have to understand, Lusana is playing a very sophisticated political game. He's seeking global legitimacy.
How does he do that?
By fighting what he calls a clean war. He's focusing exclusively on military and infrastructure targets. He's trying to build this image of a disciplined, legitimate liberation army, not a terrorist group.
Okay, so that brings us to the foil, the core plot point of Operation Wild Rose.
Exactly. How does an army that is so dedicated to international acceptance suddenly get linked to an act of just pure high-casualty terrorism?
We're talking about the brutal, senseless murder of a white farmer, his entire family, and 50 of his farm workers.
An act that flies directly in the face of Lusana's entire strategy. And that's what leads us to the chilling realization that this incident, this massacre, it has to be a deliberate strategic fabrication, a setup.
Okay, let's unpack the Vixen 03 story first. Starting with the sheer audacity of its mission, we really need to set the scene. January 1954, Buckley Field, Colorado.
And the aircraft itself, the Boeing C-97 Stratocruiser, is a critical piece of this puzzle.
It's a huge plane, right?
Oh, it's not just any plane. The C-97, it was derived from the B-29 bomber, and it had this really distinctive double-bellied whale look. Our sources describe it as having a great whale-like belly.
And this wasn't just any C-97.
No, this was an Air Force C-97, pale number 75403, and it was on temporary loan to the Navy, basically because they needed its massive carrying capacity for something very specific.
And that carrying capacity was, it was tested to its absolute limit on this specific flight.
To the breaking point. The pilot, Major Raymond Vilander, was trying to lift this aircraft under conditions that just defy modern safety protocols. You've got Buckley Field sitting at a 5,000-foot altitude, which right away affects your lift capability.
And the weather.
The weather. They were in the middle of a blizzard fighting a vicious 30-knot crosswind.
And then there's the payload.
The payload is the whole story. Vilander was lifting a full fuel load combined with this colossal cargo weighing 70,000 pounds.
70,000 pounds.
Let's put that into context for you. 70,000 pounds is roughly the maximum takeoff weight for a modern regional jet. And he's trying to lift that on a propeller-driven aircraft built in the late 40s, early 50s in those conditions. It required exceptional, almost reckless piloting.
And Vilander knew it. He was deeply aware of the risks.
He was. He was already stressed, lamenting that lifting this big-ass bird, as he called it, was not a garden variety takeoff. He demanded to know what was so vital that it required risking his crew like this.
He even dismissed the cargo as junk.
He did. And that's the critical pivot point, because Vilander needed assurance that the risk was justified. And he gets that assurance, or maybe coercion's a better word, from Admiral Walter Bass.
Ah, so Admiral Bass enters the picture.
Yes. Base confirms all of Vilander's factors were considered, but that the cargo Vilander called junk was actually top priority cargo destined for a highly classified test program.
So it wasn't junk at all.
Far from it. The Stratocruiser was chosen simply because it was the only heavy transport within 1,000 miles capable of handling the load. This immediately transforms the mission from just high risk to a non-negotiable national priority.
And this is where the Admiral gives the most chilling, non-negotiable order in the entire narrative.
It's unbelievable. Vilander asks the routine question. What are the ditching protocols? What if we run into trouble?
A standard pilot question.
Absolutely. And Base's response just sets the moral framework for the entire cover-up that follows. Yeah. It was a mandatory command. The crew was not to abandon the aircraft, not between departure and destination, regardless of how dire the circumstances.
So if they crash?
If they crash, they must ride her down into a non-populated area. This isn't just military discipline. This is a clear directive to sacrifice your own life and the lives of your crew to protect whatever's in that cargo hold.
That sounds absolutely insane in terms of flight safety, but the source makes it clear this order came from the very top.
Oh, the very top.
Yeah.
Bass was able to give that order because the entire operation was being monitored directly by the Secretary of Defense, Charles Wilson.
Who is briefing the president directly?
Briefing President Eisenhower personally. Ike required detailed updates. The source even notes that Wilson explicitly acknowledged the nightmare scenario of the plane crashing in or near a major city.
So that confirms it. The cargo was either highly volatile, deeply sensitive, or posed an extreme public danger.
Exactly, like radioactive material. A crash in a populated zone was politically and strategically just? Unacceptable. The security level assigned to Vixen 03 was existential.
And tragically, that insane order became relevant almost immediately. Vilander somehow gets the Stratocruiser off the ground, barely clearing the end of the runway.
He's climbing slowly toward 16,000 feet over the Rockies. But the trouble starts almost as soon as they reach altitude. The mechanical failures just cascade. First, a short circuit in the radio transmitter area, which starts filling the cockpit with this acrid smoke. But that's a minor crisis compared to what happens next. The catastrophic failure of the No. 3 engine. The Stratocruiser begins shaking itself apart just violently when a propeller blade separates and rips through the fuselage.
A prop blade from an engine like that must have been massive.
Unbelievably so. It ripped a 6-foot gash in the cargo cabin wall. The damage assessment Vilander makes is just terrifyingly simple. They lost cabin pressure, but critically, the severed cables and hydraulic lines meant they lost all aileron and rudder control.
So the plane is basically a falling brick.
Vilander's description is visceral. We can go up and we can go down, but we can't turn and bank. They're a ballistic missile at this point, losing altitude at 100 feet per minute, trying to navigate the jagged Colorado Rockies in a crippled plane. He knows he can't make it back.
And that mandatory order from Bass kicks in.
It kicks in. He has to find a spot to crash, a non-populated area. As they drop toward 10,000 feet, Vilander spots what he believes is a massive, flat, snow-covered field.
A potential runway.
A potential runway. He coaxes the massive plane toward it, attempting a wheels-up landing. And the landing itself is masterful. Plane settles down like a colossal sled or a ski, and it slides to a stop. For a moment, Vilander thinks it's a miracle.
But it isn't.
No. The silence that follows is broken by this chilling soundscape. A deep rumbling vibration, a crackling noise, and then the tortured screech of bending metal.
The field.
Vilander's field was actually the ice-covered surface of Table Lake. The weight of the heavily burdened Stratocruiser was just far too much. The ice cracked instantly.
Oh my God.
And that's the final silent horror. The entire plane, cargo and crew and all this, falls through the ice and sinks rapidly. The men, still strapped into their seats, they would have drowned instantly in the shock of that cold water before they could even react.
And the blizzard just covers it all up.
The lake refroze quickly in the blizzard conditions. The location of Vixen 03, tail number 75403, was now perfectly concealed, thousands of miles from where the world would soon believe it crashed.
And the cover-up is activated immediately.
Instantly. Admiral Bass, having lost the plane and crew but successfully protected the secret cargo from hitting a city, reports the standard protocol. The plane vanished over the Pacific, and right there, 34 years of deception began.
Okay, let's jump forward. 34 years into the future. It's 1988, and the stage shifts completely to Dirk Pitt.
Special Projects Director for UMA.
Right, and he's just staying at a mountain cabin belonging to Congresswoman Lauren Smith. And the way this deep secret gets uncovered It wasn't some sophisticated satellite tracking or a dedicated search team.
No, not at all. It was just sheer dumb luck.
He was just looking for fishing gear.
Literally. He was looking for fishing gear in Lauren Smith's garage, trying to find tackle that belonged to her father, Charlie Smith, who had recently died in a mysterious explosion.
Another mystery.
Another mystery entirely. And while he's climbing over clutter, he pulls back a drop cloth and uncovers the first clues. A corroded aircraft oxygen tank and a heavily corroded nose gear still attached to its wheels.
Just sitting in a garage.
Just sitting there. And Lorraine herself, she just dismisses them as junk her father bought at a surplus sale. Her dad, Charlie, was described as a frustrated inventor, always tinkering with contraptions. So the random presence of military scrap wasn't that unusual for him.
But Pitt knows better.
Pitt knew these weren't just junk. They were specific, heavy-duty parts. He takes them to an FAA inspector, a guy named Harvey Dolan, for an initial assessment.
And Dolan confirms they're from something big.
Something very big. Dolan confirms they came from a propeller-driven craft from the 1950s, weighing between 70 and 80,000 pounds. And the crucial technical nugget Dolan provides is that a craft this large could not possibly be an unreported wreck. These weren't homemade parts. Goodyear tires, Rantoul engineering wheels.
The identification breakthrough, though, comes from someone else, a United Airlines maintenance chief.
Right, Phil Devine. He recognized the distinct structural design immediately.
And what did he say?
He immediately pegged the parts as belonging to the Boeing Stratocruiser, specifically the Air Force C-97 version, the double-bellied whale. This recognition just narrows the field dramatically.
Now for the forensic link, the paper trail.
The serial number. Dolan traces the serial number on the nose gear strut, 7-5403. And this is where the paper trail should end, but instead it leads directly into the heart of the cover-up.
It's a match.
It's a perfect match. The serial number confirmed the aircraft belonged to the military, a C-97, tail number 75403, commanded by Major Violander. The very plane the official Air Force records claim vanished over the Pacific in 1954.
So this is where the bureaucratic denial has to kick in.
Oh, it kicks in hard in the form of Colonel Abe Steiger of Air Force Safety. And you have to understand, Steiger's job is to maintain the integrity of the official record.
So when Pitt presents this impossible evidence,
Steiger has to explain it away. He has to explain how a part from a plane that was lost in the Pacific ended up in a garage in Colorado.
and his initial theory is just fascinating in how, well, banal it is.
It is. He claims the nose gear was probably replaced due to some minor damage, a crack, a hard landing, and just discarded locally. He says it's a common administrative oversight that it wasn't in the maintenance logs.
So the official story holds.
According to Steiger, yes. The official disappearance, he claims, remains genuine.
But Pitt doesn't buy it.
No. Pitt, after exhausting all the traditional search methods, keeps coming back to the items themselves. The oxygen tank, the nose gear. What is there one common characteristic? This is where his analysis goes beyond just investigation and becomes true deductive reasoning.
The floating theory?
The critical insight, yeah. It comes while he's watching local teenagers rafting near Table Lake. And he realizes their common trait. They float, or at least they're relatively buoyant.
So they must have escaped the plane as it was sinking.
Exactly. He realizes these parts must have popped out of the sinking aircraft and floated to the surface before the lake froze over again. And that's where Charlie Smith, the curious local inventor, must have discovered them decades ago. This simple realization just completely invalidates the Pacific crash site.
So Pitt acts fast now. He knows he can't go through official channels because Steiger is already working to dismiss the evidence.
Right. He charters the Inumang plane, the Catlin M200, and brings in his longtime partner, Al Giordino, to fly in this sophisticated underwater TV equipment, all under the pretense of an unauthorized clandestine project.
And he's already figured out that Table Lake is man-made.
Correct. He deduces it was dammed in 1945, which means it likely conceals structures that predate its existence. He's looking for something massive at the bottom of lakes. It's, 140 feet deep in places.
And he gets a local clue.
A crucial local clue from an old fisherman who mentions a big hole toward the north end of the lake, a spot where he frequently loses his fishing lures. This suggests a large structure or depression on the lake bed.
So they follow the tip.
They follow the tip. They lower the TV camera 140 feet into the murky water. After minutes of tense searching, they locate the wreckage, half buried in the silt near the submerged remnants of an old lumber mill.
And the confirmation is instant.
Instant and irrefutable. The TV camera relays the image. The words Military Air Transport Service are visible on the fuselage, and the vertical stabilizer clearly displays the serial number 75403.
And Steiger's there watching this.
Steiger's there monitoring the clandestine search with Pitt, and he is utterly shattered. He just keeps repeating, "My God, it's '03, but that's impossible." The cover-up that took 34 years and the authority of a sitting president has just been dismantled by a piece of floating scrap metal.
The discovery of Vixen '03 is a massive historical event, but the real deep dive and the immediate danger begins when Pitt actually suits up and dives down to the wreck.
Right, a 140-foot dive into this icy preserved tomb. The freezing water acted as an unparalleled preservation mechanism. It's quite grim.
So he enters the cargo hold first.
He does. And what he finds immediately confirms the top-secret nature of the mission. The hold is just packed with 36 gleaming stainless steel cylindrical canisters.
Any markings on them?
Completely unmarked, sealed and firmly strapped to wooden blocks, although some of the straps had broken during the impact.
The sheer number and the nature of these cylinders, stainless steel, built to contain something highly sensitive, it just screams Cold War paranoia.
Absolutely. They are clearly the reason the crew was ordered to commit suicide rather than abandon ship.
He then moves to the control cabin.
And the preservation effect there is just grimly successful. The 4 members of the original crew, Violander, Gold, Hoffman, and Burns, they're still strapped tightly in their seats by their nylon safety belts.
And their bodies.
Their skeletons are preserved inside their Air Force blue uniforms. The water preserved the fabric perfectly, but of course the flesh is gone. It leaves them frozen in their final tragic postures.
But the narrative shifts violently here. From just tragedy to outright horror, this is when Pitt discovers the 5th body.
Yes. This is the element of murder that proves the cover-up wasn't just institutional. It was violently enforced.
The 5th skeleton.
A 5th skeleton is found strapped to cargo tie-down rings in the cargo hold. And this individual was secured by straps tied hand and foot. It's a clear execution-style disposal.
And there's a difference in preservation.
A huge difference. Unlike the 4 crew members, this body still has remnants of flesh adhering to the bones, which indicates that death occurred much, much later. We're talking years after the 1954 crash.
And the uniform is different?
The uniform is different. It's an old Army-issue khaki, not Air Force blue.
This immediately raises the stakes. This isn't just a wreck anymore, it's a crime scene.
It is. And Pitt immediately connects this victim to the man who started this entire investigation, Charlie Smith, Lawrence Smith's deceased father.
How does he make that connection?
The forensic logic Pitt uses here is incredibly specific and chilling. Charlie Smith, the former Army demolitions expert and the original finder of the parts, had died in that mysterious explosion 3 years prior. And the local sheriff's report claimed that only a boot and a thumb were found, which, allowed for a quick, if gruesome, accidental identification.
And Pitt deduces.
Pitt deduces that the killer who staged the explosion must have planted those fragments. The skeleton found strapped in the Vixen '03 cargo hold, the real Charlie Smith, is now missing a boot and a thumb.
Wow. So the crime was committed to permanently silence the local man who stumbled upon one of the biggest secrets of the Cold War.
Precisely. The motive is crystallized. Smith found the parts that led him to the hidden wreckage and its secret cargo, making him an unacceptable liability to whoever was still maintaining the cover-up.
To uncover the full truth of the mission, though, they had to decipher the lost records.
And Giordino undertakes this critical chemical and linguistic project on a waterlogged vinyl folder that Pitt retrieved from Vilander's seat pocket.
It's amazing that anything was left.
It is. And this is where scientific patience pays off. Giordino uses this careful mixture, a kind of chemical bath with vinegar and baking soda, to stabilize the paper and reveal the ink that had nearly disappeared after 3 decades underwater.
And what they find just destroys the official Air Force narrative forever.
Completely. They confirm the names, Major Vilander, Flight Engineer Joseph Burns. But the crucial geographic clue is the weather report. Skies clearing beyond western slopes.
And that phrase proves.
It definitively proves the flight originated east of the Colorado Rockies. Because if they were flying from the west, from California, they would be encountering the slopes, not clearing them. It flatly contradicts the official Pacific flight path story.
What else do they find?
They also confirmed the call sign was Vixen '03, and the destination was partially deciphered as ETA Rangelo 060, which is an unknown location. But it confirms the true destination was definitely not Hickam, Hawaii.
And the authorization.
The orders were dated January 1954 and carried the highest authorization, Top Secret Code 1A.
So the synthesis is powerful. Someone very high in the U.S. government intentionally released a flagrantly false accident report on Vixen 03.
They concealed the true location, the true mission, and the mandatory crash order. This confirms that cargo wasn't just important, it was the highest priority national secret.
So we know it's a top-secret cargo, but what exactly was in those 36 gleaming stainless steel canisters?
Well, Pitt and Giordino connect the dots logically. You have these cylindrical canisters, a highly secret military mission, and the date, January 1954. What major top-secret event was happening in January 1954 that required highly sensitive material to be moved under maximum security?
The nuclear bomb test is at Bikini Atoll.
Exactly.
And they get physical confirmation.
The final physical confirmation comes from a small aluminum plate that Pitt recovered from the pilot's pocket. After they carefully clean it in Giordino's solution, the etching on the surface is revealed.
The symbol for radioactivity.
The symbol for radioactivity. That is the smoking gun. The cargo was almost certainly nuclear material or even warheads, which provides the full context for Admiral Bass's chilling order to sacrifice the entire crew to prevent a catastrophic crash near a major city.
The cover-up wasn't about bureaucratic embarrassment.
No, it was about preventing mass panic and geopolitical disaster, which led to decades of institutional deception and ultimately to murder.
Okay, now that the evidence is completely overwhelming, you have the wreck, the bodies, the flight orders, the radioactive material. Steiger and Pitt have to confront the author of this deception.
Right, who authorized this suicide mission and then perpetuated the 34-year cover-up.
The identification comes from an FBI contact, Paul Buckner.
Yes, who applies this combination of linguistic and military rank knowledge to that partially deciphered flight order. He analyzes the 7-letter rank where the 5th letter is R and the signatory's name BS.
And he deduces the rank must be admiral, not general.
Correct. And the signatory is identified as Admiral Walter Horatio Bass, the same naval officer we met giving that mandatory crash order back in 1954.
And we learn a little about his career. A Navy whiz kid.
Whiz kid, yeah. He received his first star incredibly early, at 38, but then he was later exiled to a minor Boondocks Fleet base before retiring in 1959.
The crucial nugget here is the implication of that career path.
It's very telling. Bass was highly successful, highly ambitious, but his career just stalls 5 years after Vixen 03. It suggests that while the mission was covered up, there were political consequences for him. Maybe an early attempt to sideline him while maintaining the security of the secret.
And in 1988, he's running a country inn.
He's running Anchorage House, a quaint country inn in Virginia.
So Pitt goes straight to Virginia. He finds Bass in this state of cultivated tranquility, clearing lily pads at his pond.
And Pitt confronts him directly with the evidence of Vixen 03, the flight orders.
And Bass's reaction is a masterclass in controlled denial.
Oh, completely. He is perfectly calm, denies any memory of Vixen 03 or Major Violander. He claims his specialty was surface ordnance guns, deck weapons, not air transport, and just dismisses Pitt's claims.
But Pitt doesn't buy it.
No, Pitley's absolutely convinced that Bass, the sole living link to the origin of the secret, is simply feigning total ignorance to protect the deep legacy of this cover-up.
Now, you would expect that once this evidence video, forensic analysis, the recovery of 5 bodies was presented to the military leadership, they would have to act.
You'd think so. But the Pentagon's resistance is just a profound lesson in institutional denial. Steiger presents the complete findings, including the Charlie Smith murder theory, to 2 Air Force generals, Bergdorf and O'Keefe.
And their reaction is pure bureaucratic inertia.
Fueled by fear of scandal. They don't just dismiss the findings, they try to intellectually dismantle them. They claim the canisters are empty, that the recovered documents were misread due to water damage.
And they even suggest the crew is at fault.
Unbelievably, yes. They posit that the 1,000-mile course deviation suggests nothing more than crew stupidity, or maybe even a failed plot by Violander to steal the aircraft. It is easier for them to believe their own crew committed treason than to admit the official records are a decades-old lie.
Then they double down on the deception.
They do. General O'Keefe produces what he calls counterproof, an original flight order, supposedly authorized by a Colonel Michael Irwin, claiming the genuine flight path to the Pacific was confirmed all along.
This is a clear fabrication.
A clear, fabricated attempt to discredit Steiger. They are creating new history in 1988 to maintain the lie from 1954. The implication is just staggering. The government not only buried the truth, but is actively employing high-ranking officials decades later to manufacture false documents just to prevent accountability.
So the final mandate is delivered to Steiger. Close the file.
Close the file on Vixen 03, bury the truth, or risk your entire career as an air safety investigator. The only concession they'll make is to remove the crew's remains.
But quietly.
Without publicity, to ensure no media attention validates any of Pitt's findings.
And this high-level obstruction spans administrations. It goes all the way up to the president.
All the way. Who ultimately decides to leave the mystery buried. The source quotes the president stating, "If Eisenhower buried the answers during his administration, far be it from me to open a can of worms during mine."
So this confirms the cover-up is not about Base or O'Keefe. It's a continuous bipartisan policy decision.
A decision that sees the strategic risk of the truth being revealed as perpetually higher than the moral duty to report the facts.
Okay, so we have this clear 3-decade precedent that the U.S. government will bury secrets this deep and actively protect the cover-up with deception and even murder. That leads us perfectly to our structural transition. Let's pivot now to 1988 South Africa, where another state, facing its own existential crisis, is about to try and manufacture a secret to manipulate international opinion.
We shift our focus to the volatile political landscape of 1988 South Africa. The white minority government is fighting a desperate war for international legitimacy and domestic control against the African Army of Revolution, the AAR.
And our sources introduce Captain Patrick Fawkes, a massive Scotsman, ex-Royal Navy, now a natal farmer. He is about to become the instrument of the state's most cynical scheme.
The tension is palpable.
Yeah.
You have the South African Defense Minister, Peter de Waal, and his intelligence chief, Colonel Joris Ziegler, strategizing against the AAR, which is led by Hiram Lusana.
And Lusana is the key. He's running this highly intelligent campaign.
Extremely intelligent. He understands that to get moral and financial support from the West, from the U.S. and Europe, he cannot be perceived as a terrorist. His strategy is explicitly a clean war, focusing only on military and governmental targets, avoiding civilian casualties at all cost. His entire legitimacy is built on that perception.
Which brings us to the tragedy on the Fawkes farm, a setup so horrific and so perfectly tailored that it's designed to destroy Lusana's legitimacy instantly.
It begins with Captain Fawkes being ambushed on his way to meet de Waal. He runs into these ruthless, local teenagers who had just murdered 2 travelers, and it forces him into a violent confrontation. It establishes his own capacity for violence and vengeance right from the start.
And this sets the stage for the main raid.
The main raid. A force of 30 soldiers, dressed in identical AAR camouflage, attacks Fawkes' farm. They execute 2 guards during a calculated shift change when the electrified fence is momentarily switched off. They then systematically murder Fawkes' son, Patrick Jr., and then his wife, Myrna, and his daughter, Jenny.
And the sources say the resistance from Myrna and Jenny was fierce.
Fierce and bloody. They fought back with a Holland & Holland 12-gauge shotgun and a .44 Magnum revolver. This detail really emphasizes the brutality of the conflict and the level of violence required to subdue them.
But the massacre doesn't stop with the family.
No. The raiders ruthlessly execute the farm workers and even the cattle in the compound. This extreme level of violence is designed for one purpose: to maximize international horror and revulsion.
And the evidence is managed like a state operation.
Meticulously. The raiders police the scene. They retrieve their own dead. They carefully collect spent cartridges, making positive identification almost impossible. However, they deliberately leave behind circumstantial evidence, CK-88 plastic cartridges, and fragments of a Chinese-made watch to point the finger specifically at the AAR, who are known to use Chinese-supplied equipment.
This is where the deception is confirmed.
It is. Marcus Samala, who is an actual AAR section leader, was scouting the Fawkes farm and witnesses the whole raid. And he is completely shocked because he recognizes the uniforms, but he knows those men are not AAR members. They're imposters.
So Samala tries to retreat to report this imposter attack.
But he is shot in the back by a sniper. A clear move to silence the only witness who could expose the entire operation as a state-sponsored fabrication.
And Lusana's reaction is the final piece of evidence of his innocence.
Oh, absolutely. When he receives Samala's dying report, he is genuinely shaken. He recognizes immediately that this brutality contradicts his no-terrorism strategy, and that an external force is masquerading as the AAR. He knows his life's work of building legitimacy is being surgically destroyed.
Meanwhile, the South African government uses Fawkes' grief perfectly.
Perfectly. Fawkes, who is just consumed by vengeance for the murder of his entire family, confronts Defense Minister de Waal and Intelligence Chief Ziegler and volunteers to lead the operational retaliation.
And this is where the core intelligence nugget, the shocking purpose of Operation Wild Rose, is revealed.
De Waal and Ziegler describe it to him as a monstrous concept involving terrorism at its worst. The plot is to use a black hit-and-run force, fully sanctioned and backed by the white government, to masquerade as the AAR.
The strategic intent is utterly cynical and Machiavellian.
Completely. The operation is designed to execute high-casualty terror attacks that are so brutal and so senseless that they will swing international sympathy away from the blacks and to the white cause of South Africa.
This is a desperate measure.
An act of desperation. The white government believes that if Lusana achieves international legitimacy, their economic collapse and international isolation are inevitable. So Operation Wild Rose is intended to destroy Lusana's moral platform by painting him as a vicious terrorist, thus preventing foreign intervention and saving the white regime. The state is sanctioning large-scale murder to manipulate global policy.
So Lusana, knowing this existential threat is coming, tasks his intelligence chief, Major Thomas Machida, with getting concrete proof of Operation Wild Rose.
Right. And this leads Machida to a meeting with this highly elusive informer known only as Emma.
And Emma is a master of tradecraft.
A true master. The sources really emphasize how elusive and skilled Emma is, changing identity, accent, appearance for every single meeting. This immediately suggests a high-level professional operative, likely selling information from the highest echelons of the South African government.
And Emma offers the full operational details of Wild Rose for a staggering price.
$2 million US. And Emma confirms the plan involves high-casualty terrorism, specifically designed to turn international opinion against Lusana. The price tag alone confirms the gravity of the information.
This leads to intense internal conflict within the AAR.
It does. Colonel Jumana, who is Lusana's ambitious rival, loudly protests the payment. He argues it's a ripoff, a fraud. He dismisses Emma's information as worthless fabrications designed to drain their resources.
But Lusana overrides him.
Lusana overrides Jumana, sensing the threat is genuine. But Lusana has his own plan, a double cross. He intends to pay Emma, but he immediately orders Machida to kill him and retrieve both the $2 million and the operational details.
And the rendezvous is set for this dramatically cinematic location.
Ghost ride in a traveling amusement park.
Machida's attempted assassination fails spectacularly.
Oh, completely. He tries to use an ice pick hidden in a basket, a quiet weapon, but in the dark, violently rocking amusement park car, he misses. And Emma's accomplice, dressed bizarrely as the devil, smashes Machida's wrist with a pitchfork.
So Emma escapes with the $2 million.
Escapes with the money, leaving Machida with a broken wrist and only an envelope detailing operating procedures for military garbage removal.
Military garbage removal.
It's a crucial detail. Emma either sold false information or more likely double-crossed Lusana and left this mocking clue, implying that the AAR's operation was so worthless it amounted to garbage removal.
This failed attempt and the lost money just fuels the underlying tension between Lusana and Jumana.
It pours gasoline on it. The rivalry between them is existential, and the source provides this vivid anecdote that demonstrates Jumana's treachery.
The crocodile.
The crocodile. While Lusana is fishing, a crocodile silently approaches. Jumana notices the threat but remains completely silent, just hoping Lusana will be killed.
But Machida saves him.
Machida's quick alert is the only thing that saves Lusana's life, and the implication is clear. Jumana is not just an ideological opponent. He is a violent, ambitious rival, actively seeking Lusana's death so he can seize command of the AAR.
So Lusana, now facing external terror and internal treachery, sets his final course.
He decides the only way to combat Operation Wild Rose is to expose it on the world stage. He chooses to fly to Washington, D.C. to testify at congressional hearings that were arranged by his American political ally, Congressman Frederick Daggett.
He wants to warn the Americans directly.
But this decision comes with huge personal and strategic risk. He leaves the ambitious and treacherous Colonel Jumana in command, and he fears that he is paving the road to his own downfall.
And this is where the South African crisis meets domestic U.S. intrigue, bringing us right back to Dirk Pitt's friend, Lawrence Smith.
Yes, Congressman Frederick Daggett, a powerful black politician from New Jersey, is lobbying hard for the AAR. He sees Lusana's success as a direct path to his own power, potentially even the vice presidency.
And Daggett tries to manipulate Congresswoman Lauren Smith for her vote in favor of Lusana.
He does. He tries to bribe her by offering Felicia Collins, who is Lusana's mistress and a famous entertainer, in exchange for her support.
And Lusana agrees to this.
Lusana agrees to the exchange, prioritizing the political gain of getting Smith's vote over any personal sentiment for Felicia. It's cold, hard political calculus. He's using his mistress as currency.
But Lauren Smith rejects the proposal outright.
She does. She refuses to back Lusana, citing his extensive criminal history, which Daggett tries to just dismiss as irrelevant past behavior.
But she also stands up to Daggett's intimidation tactics.
His attempt to pressure her by stirring up trouble where it need not exist. And Daggett, angered by her rejection, then pressures Felicia Collins to find blackmail material on Smith to manufacture a scandal.
The political maneuvering has now spiraled into domestic espionage and attempted blackmail, all centered around enabling Lusana's mission.
And this is where the two global narratives collide. Lusana is heading to Washington to warn the U.S. government about this massive terrorist plot operation, Wild Rose.
Meanwhile, the instrument of that plot, Captain Patrick Fawkes, is beginning his mission. He deceived his friends into believing he returned to Scotland.
Right. And Fawkes, the vengeful farmer, has taken command of a massive, derelict ship. It's described as an implied salvage vessel, or an old warship in Chesapeake Bay.
In Chesapeake Bay.
This heavily salvaged ship is the intended vehicle for the monstrous act he is about to unleash under the banner of Operation Wild Rose. The state-sponsored terror is now on America's doorstep.
And the location is critical.
The location of the attack is absolutely critical. Fawkes is in the Chesapeake Bay, one of the most strategic, sensitive, and populated waterways in the entire United States. The threat is immediate, it's immense, and it's tragically tied to the institutional secrecy we just spent 34 years dissecting. So when we connect these two seemingly disparate events, Vixen 03 in 1954 and Operation Wild Rose in 1988, the fundamental insight is the willingness of governments to exercise, well, extreme moral compromise in the name of national survival.
Right. In 1954, you have Admiral Bass and President Eisenhower establishing this calculus where the strategic risk of revealing a nuclear secret, Vixen 03, was deemed higher than the lives of the crew, and later the life of an innocent civilian, Charlie Smith.
And that proved the existence of a formal, high-level policy of expendability and institutional denial that spanned decades.
And then in 1988, we see South Africa adopt an even more cynical variation on that. The state wasn't just covering up a secret.
No, it was actively manufacturing a crisis through the monstrous scheme of Operation Wild Rose. Their goal was to use high-casualty terrorism, disguised as the AAR, to deliberately destroy Lusana's legitimacy and manipulate global policy, all to avoid economic collapse.
The convergence is terrifying. The discovery of Vixen 03 confirmed that U.S. officials are willing to bury nuclear secrets so deep they will resort to murder to keep them silent.
And that institutional precedent, that prioritization of secrecy above all else, makes you ask, what happens when an enemy nation understands that specific vulnerability?
And Fawkes, the instrument of the state, he's the ultimate expression of this dark morality, a former naval engineer driven by this intense, personal, bloody vengeance for his family.
And he has been sanctioned by the South African state to execute Wild Rose, and he is now commanding a massive, derelict vessel right in the heart of American strategic waters, the Chesapeake Bay.
So we know Vixen 03 contained nuclear material that the U.S. military still desperately doesn't want discovered. We know Fawkes is preparing for high-casualty terrorism to implicate Lusana and force Western intervention. The question is, why Chesapeake Bay? What kind of devastating attack could Fawkes possibly launch from a massive salvage warship in that location to maximize terror and strategic impact?
We'll leave you with this final provocative thought. If a government's greatest secret is the price it is willing to pay to maintain its power, a price demonstrated by the crew of Vixen 03, and that secret involves nuclear material buried nearby, what happens when private, bloody revenge, sanctioned by a hostile state, targets that exact intersection of American national security secrets and strategic vulnerability? What kind of catastrophe is Fawkes planning, and how does the buried truth of 1954 inform the terror of 1988?